Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Monday. Bethany Dotson, relationship coach and trauma sensitive yoga therapist for high achieving professional career women who have a lifelong pattern of attracting unavailable partners. That could be emotionally unavailable, that could be partners who have narcissistic tendencies. And today I want to talk about the ultimate recipe in overcoming what has probably been your lifelong habit of attracting and staying too long with emotionally unavailable partners. This has probably followed you. You get a different person, and as the familiar pattern starts happening over and over again, this has probably been going on for your entire adult life. Most of the women that I work with are in their late 40s, their 50s, their 60s, sometimes their early 70s. And they've never truly had a healthy romantic relationship because of this pattern that follows them around from person to person to person. They think they're making a better choice with the next partner that they date or marry. And it ultimately winds up being oftentimes even worse than the one before. So if you're with me live today, please drop a comment and say hello. Let me know that you're here, ask questions. And then if you watch this on replay, you're also welcome to ask a question, say hello, leave a comment, and I will circle back with you. So when it comes to overcoming this lifelong pattern, this thing that's invisible thing that's followed you around from person to person, the number one thing that you must master with yourself, and I've talked about this in other videos, but it's worth repeating, is accepting responsibility. Now, a lot of people will recognize, yes, I have this pattern. It's followed me around from relationship to relationship, but oftentimes that level of responsibility, that's kind of the level that it stops at. They might get into therapy because the relationship that they've been in has been so destructive to her emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically. I see a lot of women who have digestive disorders, or they've got autoimmune disorders because of the stress that they were living in on a daily basis in that relationship. A lot of times, unfortunately, it's affected her financially. I also speak to a lot of women who have been supporting underachieving partners because on an unconscious level, it makes her feel good. It makes her feel like she's needed. So you have to accept responsibility on the ways that you are unavailable, the ways that you are emotionally unavailable, the ways that you have commitment issues. There's a wonderful book that I reference sometimes with clients that talks about active commitment issues and passive commitment issues. And the author talks about, a lot of people with narcissistic tendencies or, emotionally unavailable men who come on really, really strong and then kind of ghost you or string you along and it slowly starts to fade out. Those people have active commitment issues. But what a lot of women who are in this pattern don't recognize is that they often have commitment issues. They are emotionally unavailable. And a couple of ways that you are doing this is that every time you ignore a red flag, every time you sense, one of the questions that I ask women that I talk to on our enrollment conversations, and a lot of people try to evade this question. They don't want to answer it because they don't want to face the truth. And this is one of the main reasons that makes you emotionally unavailable or commitment phobic, is that you don't want to face the truth in the relationship. And oftentimes women that I work with and talk to know quite right away, very, very quickly, within the first couple of weeks, if not the first month, that something didn't feel right. They sensed something was off. There is a great relationship expert, author, speaker. His name is Stefan Speaks, I think is his YouTube handle. But he has a wonderful, brutally honest quote that says, women don't get played by men, women play themselves. And that is extremely accurate, because one of the ways that you're emotionally unavailable is when you feel the calling of your heart, the calling of your intuition. early in a relationship scenario, and you don't listen to that, and you don't follow that, or you don't explore that further and seek clarity. And in my work, we practice what's called direct communication. Direct communication is a skill set, a style of communicating that overcomes anxious attachment styles and avoidant attachment styles. Ultimately, we want to be moving through our life with a secure attachment style. So learning how to directly communicate your feelings is something that we work on in my program with the clients that I work with. But if you're not doing that on your own, if you have a pervasive pattern of people pleasing in other areas of your life, I'm working with somebody now who has a lifelong pattern of unavailable men, but she's also, she's a wonderful, amazing, talented, educated, hardworking individual. But she's been in a corporate job that is sucking her soul, and she's been there for over a decade. And she's, known for quite some time, many years, that this wasn't the job for her. But that constant overriding of that intuition causes you to be emotionally unavailable. If you're not listening to your intuition, and women, by the way, this is proven in science, are biologically wired to have stronger intuitive senses because of, evolution and raising children and having to protect their children. So we have a stronger innate sense naturally of being more connected to our bodies. But when you begin dating somebody and in the first few weeks, you're kind of like, I don't know if this adds up or not, and you ignore that, or you day to day, week to week ignore a job or career scenario that you feel stuck in, and you don't do anything about that because you're telling yourself it's going to be too hard, or you're telling yourself, oh, but he's so, he fits everything that I want in my list of my ideal person, and you are not, or he makes me feel so good, or he tells me I'm beautiful every day, and you are minimizing or making justifications. That behavior that you are doing is called emotional unavailability. And it's also called being commitment phobic. It's a passive way that you are not fully in the moment, and you are not truly being emotionally intimate and setting yourself up for the space to be vulnerable or emotionally intimate. A lot of women stay too long in these relationships where they get with emotionally unavailable partners. Number one, because they themselves are emotionally unavailable. When we like get the microscope and really look at their life and the behaviors and the choices and the stories that they're telling themselves. But they're also, they're conflict avoidant. They don't want to speak up. They're afraid of rejection or abandonment. So these ways, if you recognize yourself going, ooh, yes, I'm doing that. These are ways that you are not fully present for yourself. You are not emotionally available. You are not, if you cannot commit to your own internal guidance system, and your own internal guidance system, once that's developed, I'll talk about ways that gets destroyed and damaged. But once you really tune into your own internal guidance system and you trust that and you take action on that, and there are going to be plenty of times where that action has you do something that's way out of your comfort zone, or it means that you have to put yourself square dead in the face of somebody rejecting you or abandoning you, or you have to be square and dead in the face of feeling lonely or giving up something that you worked so hard to achieve. This is what produces emotional availability. As I tell my clients, it's about learning how to do the hard but right thing. So some common ways that we also work on when you've spent many years in perhaps a toxic marriage, or you've spent your whole entire adult life going from one unavailable guy to another unavailable guy to another unavailable guy. And in that process, those years that you've done that, you've had to ignore your intuition thousands of times, if not millions, right, over decades. When you do that, you lose the ability to trust yourself. A lot of women, every woman that I talk to at some point during our conversation and in our work together, they tell me, I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself to make a good decision in a good relationship. And I don't trust that a good guy, a really good guy, is going to see me as valuable, is going to see me as worthy, because they don't believe that. And if you've spent your whole entire adult life ignoring red flags or people pleasing or avoiding conflict or burying your head in the sand or trying to change somebody so that you feel you can feel good in the relationship, you have basically disconnected and it's like a muscle that atrophies. You don't know how to use your intuition anymore. It becomes like, it's like learning a foreign language sometimes all over again. Like it's really hard to do. And the area in your brain, especially if you've had, emotional abuse, or you've been with a partner who gaslit you or who manipulated you, or you were, exposed to psychological abuse, that area of your brain called the insular cortex is the area that's responsible for you turning inward and tuning in and listening, and most importantly, acting on that information. That area of your brain goes dark. There's not a lot of activity in that area of the brain. And the area of the brain that is responsible for your fight or flight, which is threats and perceived threats, and what could happen and what could go wrong if I start dating again, and what could go wrong if I leave this partner. Am I going to be alone forever? Am I going to die lonely? Am I too old and nobody's going to find me attractive anymore? That area of your brain, called your amygdala, becomes bigger because you have had to misuse that during the relationship to survive and get through the relationship. And so a lot of times when you have a pattern of unavailability over and over and over again, you're not practicing using the part of your brain that's responsible. And you tend to, the brain wiring gets like Christmas lights. It gets all jumbled up, and it's not firing and wiring in a way that produces calm, that produces self-trust, that produces a strong, deep connection, safe connection with your intuition, that builds that self-trust. So you have to, first and foremost, accept responsibility for the ways that you've done that. And a lot of times I work with people, at least initially, where they want to talk about all of the things that their ex did. Or they enter the work. And sometimes when they enter the work, they're still kind of talking to like an ex, or they're still kind of talking to a guy that they've been dating, who they've been sleeping with, but he won't commit to them. And they want to talk about, well, he's had such a hard life, or he's had such a rough, 2020, 2021, it was rough years for everybody. And they want to make excuses for why there's still for the partner not being able to commit. And it's never about the other person, ever. The other person is simply mirroring back to you your own shit, your own commitment issues, your own unavailability. And this is the work that nobody really wants to do, because it's a lot easier to blame. It's a lot easier to research the narcissist. It's a lot easier to say they're wrong and I'm right. So the number one thing that you have to look at within yourself and master, if you want to break a lifelong pattern of emotionally unavailable partners, is accepting responsibility for all of the ways that you are emotionally unavailable. If you chronically ignore red flags, if you get into relationships really fast and you know that there are warning flags waving in the wind, and you just put your blinders on and plow forward anyway and hope for the best, you're emotionally unavailable. If you are staying in a career that if you wake up at 3 a.m. and you can't go to bed at night, and you are honestly assessing your life, and if you're in a career that is not your passion, is like not even in alignment with your purpose, it's draining you, and yet you stay in that career because you believe it's going to be too hard to transition, you are emotionally unavailable because you are not listening to the call of your heart. And if you want to have a healthy relationship and a life that you are wildly in love with, as one of my coaches says, it is heart business. And if you have a pervasive pattern of ignoring your heart, how can you expect anybody to cherish your heart and to be the keeper of your heart in your life moving forward? You have to do that first. So that's the first place, accepting responsibility. Second thing that you need to start looking at is your commitment level. So I talked a little bit about if you tend to attract commitment phobic partners, it is quite likely you are also commitment phobic to some degree. Now, you might not be narcissistic. You might not be, I move at lightning speed and then I ghost people. You could be another example of passive commitment issues is codependency, trying to change somebody, seeing that somebody's kind of, so many times I work with women who've done this. They get into, yet again, another relationship scenario. The women that I work with are high achievers. They're usually overachievers, meaning they do more than they think they should to feel a sense of worthiness, yet they never feel that sense of worthiness on the inside. On the outside, people might say, oh my gosh, you're such a hard worker, but on the inside, they feel empty. When you're commitment phobic, and another way that you could be commitment phobic is that you're trying to fix somebody. You're trying to help them improve. You're trying to lift up somebody who's, a sad little bird. His wings are broken. He doesn't have, a lot of passion in his own life. He might be struggling with his business, or he might be struggling with money, or he might be struggling with, a crazy ex-wife, whatever. So people, if you find yourself being the fixer, this is a sign that you also have commitment issues and that you are also on some level deeply afraid of true emotional intimacy, because it's often true emotional intimacy and vulnerability that are the biggest threats that bring up the most discomfort, because it could be potentially more rejection or abandonment. And if you also have childhood trauma, or you have complex trauma by way of narcissistic abuse or emotionally abusive relationships, you are going to have a tendency of unconsciously keeping people at arm's length. You're not going to feel too comfortable with closeness, because this has been the way that your body has programmed and your brain has been programmed to keep you safe, kind of keep my distance from people. And if you have that programming and that template, it's quite likely that you're going to get people or be a match for people who also keep their distance in relationship, and they're unavailable in many areas. I was talking to a friend recently who divorced an unavailable guy, very unavailable, then dated another man who was better, and in a lot of respects, but still unavailable. So it tends to one to the next, to the next, to the next. It really doesn't matter how much time you take off. In my experience, it doesn't matter how much therapy you do. You can talk about it, but talking about it doesn't wire and fire new chemistry in your brain or new chemistry in your body. You have to learn to develop better habits. So overcoming your own commitment issues, and by way of doing that, that means committing to your own personal development, committing to your own healing, not doing it yourself. A lot of people that I talk to have spent a lot of years just working. They get out of a relationship, or they get out of a marriage, and they go back to work because at least work gives them some type of sense of belonging or achievement. And they become kind of a workaholic because they don't want to feel lonely, or they get into a lot of hobbies and stay chronically busy in their life. When they're not at work, then their schedule is packed, and they never really have a lot of downtime to themselves, because whenever they have downtime, those familiar feelings of loneliness start creeping in, and they start inevitably feeling like something's wrong with them. And then they start comparing themselves to their married friends and wondering what's wrong with me, and why did Sally get divorced and get right back into a great relationship, and I didn't. I'm broken up with this toxic guy again. And so a lot of that busyness is a way of coping with feelings of inadequacy. So you have to really commit fully to healing if you have trauma, your own trauma, your codependency, and working with somebody who's an expert at that. I talk to a lot of women who do talk therapy, and they do it because it's what their insurance provides. That's better than nothing, but 90% of the time, what I found to be true is talk therapy is not great for healing trauma, meaning I've worked with countless people who've spent many, many years in talk therapy, and they still went out and fell for another emotional abuser, many times worse than the one before. Or they go to their therapy sessions and it's just kind of a weekly vent, meaning they're not getting any type of plan. They're not doing trauma-informed methods if they have complex trauma to rewire their brain and their nervous system. And it just, talking to somebody can feel good. It can help you feel heard and understood and seen and valued. And that can be really valuable when, for the majority of your life, you don't feel that way. But oftentimes it can only get you so far. So you really have to commit to your own personal development, your own trauma healing, overcoming your own codependency, which leads me to the third point that I want to make. If you want to overcome your pattern of emotionally unavailable partners, is that you have to get way out of your comfort zone, because the type of relationship that you ultimately say you want is going to be out of your comfort zone. One of the things that I have my clients do in the second week of working together is take themselves on a date. And this is not a date at home. This is not COVID dating. This is not a Netflix and sweatpants, and I'm going to give myself a sheet mask type of date and order Uber Eats. This is, I'm going to make a reservation for one at a fancy schmancy restaurant that I've always wanted to try, but I never have anybody to go with. I'm going to get dressed up. I'm going to put on makeup. I'm going to get myself all dolled up like I'm going on a date with an amazing person. And then they have to go and be in that experience. No cell phone, no books, no distractions. Be fully in that experience. And this helps them because inevitably they feel really uncomfortable with that. They feel really vulnerable. And vulnerability is something that they have a very, very hard time with. And they don't want to be vulnerable because they've been burned so many times, and they don't trust themselves. They don't trust themselves to, make correct decisions. So you have to get out of your comfort zone and learn to face fully your uncomfortable feelings and face your fears and, set boundaries and put yourself directly in the risk of rejection or abandonment or somebody judging you. We do trauma-informed work week to week on a daily basis with our clients to help them rewire their brain and their nervous system so that they get out of this fight or flight, daily anxiety, daily ruminating about an ex, wondering what's wrong with me, all this kind of like loneliness feelings, and put them more in a state of emotional presence, calm, ease, daily joy, and happiness. But then the second aspect of our work is like every week we invite them to do something socially that's way out of her comfort zone. So she has an opportunity to be in the initiation of life and sit with those feelings as they come up and not ignore her intuition, not bury her head in the sand around conflict. And this is what builds the skill set of learning to be in your own heart, of learning to be the keeper of your own heart, of learning to choose correctly in future relationships. A lot of the people that I work with initially have been in a rut in their life for many, many years after a divorce because their life just becomes this small, stagnant existence where they go to work, but they come home and maybe they've got kids still in the home, or maybe their kids are in college now or out of the home and married. And then they maybe go on a few meetups here and there, but they don't have any fun. They're just like existing. And then they feel resentful because their ex is posting all over social media about his wonderful life with his new younger girlfriend or new younger wife, and they still feel alone. And that energy, that existence is not going to get you the results that you want. That existence is going to produce more of the same. And often, in my experience, many women who have that template, it gets worse as the years go by. And you could be the type of person that just says, screw it, I'm never going to open my heart to love ever again. I'm just going to stay single and write off the idea of ever having a relationship. Totally fine. But there are other people that know that jadedness is not a long-term strategy. So if you know that shutting yourself down and, kind of remaining in a shell or being a bit of a curmudgeon and keeping people at arm's length is not a long-term strategy, then we can help. So if you're professional, if you are single, meaning you're not at all hoping to work it out with somebody, you've probably been single and out of a marriage or relationship for at least a few months, if not longer. You've tried dating on your own. You're having no luck. You're feeling completely disappointed. You're probably distracting yourself in your career and staying chronically busy and telling yourself you have no time. And you're probably, you're educated. You've done a lot of things. You've done a lot of talk therapy. You've done a lot of research, but you're still feeling like you're standing in the same place. You're pedaling and you're trying to move forward, but you're just kind of like stuck in the quicksand. Then we can help you get unstuck and step fully into a magical life where you feel wildly in love with your own life. You're taking more risks. Maybe you're starting a business. We've had people start businesses. We've had people quit crappy jobs and go into business or get a better fulfilling job. We've had people fall in love with soulmates. We've had people go on to date and have an amazing time doing that. So if you feel that you are stuck and you know in your heart that you are probably the root reason, you are the root reason, not probably, you are the problem around why you keep getting the wrong men, the wrong types of relationships, and you're ready to be the one yourself, and you know that you have blind spots, and you know that you have fears, and you know how you have limiting stories that you're not fully aware that you're telling yourself that are holding you back, we can help you. So go to bethanydotson.com/talk. Book a free call. We'll talk to you for about an hour, 45 minutes, and get you really, really clear on what you want. And if we can help you overcome whatever trauma is in the way, whatever self-sabotage or fears are in the way of holding you back from your true potential and ultimately a great relationship, we'll talk about how you can work with us to overcome a lifelong pattern of unavailable men. Have a wonderful Monday, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.